flay and call it work.
Hello, welcome to this week's Sit and Talk with me, Kris. For next week's Sit and Talk, I do believe it is Steve. Yeah, pretty sure it's Steve for next week. So if you have any questions, leave them for Steve for next week's Sit and Talk. And of course, if it's anything in response to what I've said today, you can of course leave it below at Kris. And so let's just jump right into these questions right away. This is from Rodesks. Kris, how do you protect models from wear and tear when they're getting used for play? I was a big fan of the old Citadel art coat, but they have discontinued that in favor of the new Minitorum varnish. And I'm not sure of the same stuff in the new can or the formulation, so I'm hesitant to try out, and I'm looking for a recommendation. So I have not used the new varnish that Citadel is producing. I have used the old art coat before. I was a big fan of it. Of course, that was before really I was doing a lot of the airbrush varnishing. And of course, if you are using your models for play, if they're not just simply for display or, you know, for your own collection or anything like that, but if you're going to be actually playing games with them, I highly recommend that you do varnish the models, because that way you'll get the most life out of them. And, you know, it's going to save you a whole bunch of headaches from repairing them all the time and things like that. And but as far as the varnish is concerned, the Minitorum, what is it? It's the Minitorum varnish. I have not tried it. If the formulation, if it's simply a rebottling of, you know, like a rebranding of the old product, then it should be okay. I mean, I don't think you should be afraid to give it a try. I mean, if you don't like it, then you can always hand it off to a friend or trade it off to a friend or something along those lines. But otherwise, there's other opportunities there. Of course, you can always try out other brands, such as like Krylon, clear varnishes and such. They offer many different types. I find that Citadel, I think it's a bit of a missed opportunity that they don't provide a gloss spray and a satin spray and a matte spray. I think they should offer all three as a spray can for everybody out there who wants different effects on their models, because again, when we do varnish a gloss effect, sometimes we want, like Tyranids, to have a bit of a glossy kind of slimy kind of look, right? Nurgle's another one, that we want to have a slimy kind of look. Whereas, if a model has a lot of flesh tones, or it's a beast, kind of like a shimmering fur, you might want to have a satin varnish on there, just kind of a bit of a between a gloss and a matte kind of finish, as opposed to a matte varnish where you completely kill all the glitter and gloss on the model and just go for something completely kind of flat. But either way, give them a try. I mean, you might like the product, you might not. Either way, if you try it once and say, hey bud, I tried it, I wasn't happy with it, you want to switch cans, or I'll trade you a bunch of bottles of paint for the spray can, or whatever, right? I mean, I'm sure you'll weasel and diesel your own way through some sort of deal or something. Anyway, this isn't dealing 101. Next one is Axis 762. Kris, I'm getting ready to start painting my Eldar, but I'm not completely sure on the color choice. I want to do an in Brazil scheme, so blues and grays. I was thinking of the 3-paint 5-layer method with VMA intermediate blue and IDF blue. I guess those are the product numbers, yeah. And then VGC turquoise, and then finally VMA gray bluish. What would I need to wash, and if so, which one? How would this all translate to airbrush, pre-shade, intermediate blue, do the center panels in turquoise, and highlight and edge highlight with the grayish blue? For the undercarriage and the weapons, what would be a good color as a base to when to build up to the VMC ivory and the white edge highlight? Would I need a wash, and if so, which one? Drakenov Nightshade seems to work well with my Dire Avenger heads, but again, I'm not sure. Thanks for the advice. Wow, that was a long question. There's a lot there. Okay, so if you're wondering what kind of, here's one thing I like to use when doing my own kind of shade washes, and that is I like to use Liquitex Flow Aid. Liquitex Flow-Aid. Just go to, the company is Liquitex and the product is called Flow-Aid. There's other companies that produce a product called Flow-Aid, which probably acts the same way. I'm not 100% sure. But I mean, I've only ever really used Liquitex's product, and it works really, really well. And you've probably seen it in a lot of videos in tutorials that I show, where basically I'll take a color, I'll take it like a normal color. I'll take, like, say, for example, Mephiston Red, and I'll put a bit on my palette. I'll add 2 drops of Liquitex Flow-Aid, and then I'll add like a couple drops of Lamian Medium or something like that, and then I'll mix it and make my own shade wash from that and apply that to the model. So if you're having a problem finding the right shade wash, maybe stick within your color palette, within your colors, and take that color and make a shade wash out of it. Or take one of your base colors, add a spot of black to it, and then make a shade wash from it there. And then that way you'll get very accurate kind of color differences, rather than trying to rely on something like Drakenhof Nightshade, which is this really dark, really kind of dark saturated kind of blue. And, you know, it might not give you the proper tonnage that you want, and you might, you know, want to do something a little bit different, or you might not want to push it quite as far down as that. You might want to keep something a little bit more subdued. Either way, I think that's probably going to be one of the better answers, is allow you to, you know, pick and choose what color you want and make your own shade wash out of that. And of course, for the weapons, the ivory with an edge highlight would not need a wash. Or which one? Yeah, if you're doing ivory and it's going for like a light white, and going for an ivory color, I would actually probably use something more along the lines of like a flesh tone to shade wash, because ivory sounds like it's an off-white, kind of like eggshell white kind of thing. It's got more, it's a more warmer white. It's not like a gray white. It's more yellowy brown kind of white. And if that's the case, if I'm remembering these colors correctly, because it's been a while since I've used a lot of my Vallejo colors, no, I really wouldn't use Drakenhof, because Drakenhof is going to make it kind of cool, because it's blues. And if it's ivory, and if this is the right ivory I'm thinking of, it has like warmer tones to it. It has a slight warm tone to it. And you might want more something along the lines of like a darker brown. Break that down to a shade wash and just do a simple recess shade. Don't shade wash the entirety of the surface, especially if you've base coated it all white. I would go for just simple recess shade. Just pick out the details in a darker color, in a darker brown, or even more like a flesh tone or something like that. And just go in and just pick those areas out, and then edge in pure white. And then you might end up with the color you're looking for. But otherwise, yeah, like you've given it a lot of thought. And it sounds like, you know, this is something that you've been you know, thinking about for quite a bit. So I think it's best to stop theorizing on it and just start committing something. Do a test model and try out your color scheme on there, and try out these techniques. Try out the shade washing techniques that I mentioned before, and try that out. And of course, if you're not sure, there are other videos in the vault on how I do this technique. I've shown it a million times. What one particular video I can't quite think of, but yeah, there are a few examples of doing it. So, but it escapes me at the moment. But thank you for the question. Rodesks. Kris, have you used pigments much in your time as a miniature painter? Do you have a favorite supplier? Are the pigments from Vallejo or Forge World or Secret Weapons superior to others? As a follow-up, what is your preferred means of binding the pigment to the model? I know there are pigment binders that you can purchase. Are they much different than a matte varnish? Thank you for your guidance. Rodesks, yes, I have used pigments before. I've used pigments plenty of times for a lot of different effects. Usually it's muddy, rusty, verdigris. Not for a lot for like actual shading and tonal type work, which a lot of people will use pigments for getting very slight gradients of color on a surface. And that's a very valid way of doing it, because pigment, you add, an acrylic medium to it, and you made acrylic paint. You add oil, you make oil paint. You know what I mean? Like, pigment is the basis of what all paints are made from. It's just whatever binder it is that's being used to make it as a particular kind of color. I do use Vallejo's colors. I have used Secret Weapons. My preferred is Vallejo, because it is such a fine talc. I've often recommended this many times in the videos when I'm using pigments, is that whenever you kind of tap the bottle, and if you see like little wisps, almost like smoke coming out. That's that really fine pigment just floating in the air. Now, of course, that is a bit of a danger because you are going to end up breathing that in, because it's a fine dust, and so you really should wear protection when you are working with pigments. Not that not that anybody's been dropping off from using pigments or anything like that, but just a precaution. You just don't want to end up with a nasty cough or anything like that. So yeah, you really should be using some sort of protection when you are using pigments, especially some really good pigments where, like as I mentioned, like they're really fine and they'll just float in the air if you just agitate the bottle and you open up the cap and you'll see the pigments just kind of floating out of the bottle. Yeah, that's the sign of a really nice fine pigment, and Vallejo pigments react that way, and I often use Vallejo pigments. Any particular binding method? In a lot of videos I've shown how to bind them by basically I've shown a few techniques. Most of the time, you can use isopropyl alcohol to get them to bind to the surface. More often than not, though, I use mineral spirits to bind to the surface. Of course, you could always use, acrylic, like a clear acrylic or something like that, like clear varnish, or even gloss varnish if you want to go for like a muddy effect. If you're using browns and earth tones and stuff like that, and you want to go for like the muddy effect, you could use gloss and such like that. It's really up to you. It takes a bit of experimentation with the pigments to kind of go for the desired effect. But I mean, pigments are essentially just dry paint. They're the building blocks of paint, and so you can use them in any fashion you like. It's up to you. They're not just, it's like an orange pigment isn't just for rust. You can actually use it to highlight reds and, things like that. Start thinking outside the box in those regards. Don't be confined by just simply what the label on the bottle says it is. Know that the very basis of that product is it's a pigment, and it's designed to be used as color on a surface, and that's all it does. And so, yeah. The Crook 88, Kris, do you ever play your Eldar anymore? What happened to MiniWarGaming doing a Halloween special? The zombie one from a few years ago was amazing. Bring back the brown cloths. So the Halloween special, yeah, we didn't do one this year. I'm not sure why. It's not up to me to make those decisions. So I just toil away in my cave, as it were, and I do my job. But yeah, so really that question is better asked to the higher tier of MiniWarGaming, I think. And as far as playing my Eldar, well, you guys are in for a bit of a treat, because I managed to get in 2 games against Steve this week of recording, which is the first week of December, and so soon enough. When they'll get posted, I have no idea, but yeah, you will see me playing with my Eldar. Spoiler, I bring a Warlock Conclave, a Skyrunner Warlock Conclave, and another one I bring a Spearhead Detachment. That's all I'll say. But yes, I did get to bring my Eldar to battle finally. Been a long time since I've dusted them off and played a game on camera with them. Chosen One, Kris, hello. I am soon to be a newer owner of a small Tyranid hive fleet, and I've got an idea for a paint scheme. I'm wanting to make them look like they came from dark worlds or subterranean areas where the bioluminescence is the name of the game. But my current idea is to prime them white, give them a coating of a light blue ink, and then a dark blue wash, and then a white silver highlight with a dry brush, as I'm a painting novice. Okay, that sounds fine. It sounds like you got a really great plan going here. I then want to highlight eyes and organs such in a cherry red and black, but I'd like your thoughts on my overall scheme and whether or not you think it will work or not. Especially, how can I improve upon with your masterwork advice? I've used a technique to make ghosts with smaller models, but I'm not entirely sure how it's going to look on a Moloch-sized critter. Thanks in advance, and early Xmas, Chosen One. So, it sounds like a really interesting color scheme. I really like the idea of the bioluminescence, and why not go for a proper bioluminescence? Why not go for like the paints that actually glow, or go for fluorescent paints? Vallejo produces some fluorescent colors. There are other fluorescent colors out there, and I'm going to pause this here because the battery on this mic is low. So I'm going to pause this right here. So yeah, as I mentioned, getting a fluorescent paint or even like a glow-in-the-dark paint, because I know there are a few companies out there that do produce glow-in-the-dark colors and such. You might want to try one of those to go for your bioluminescence kind of effect. Now, as a base, I think you could probably go with like a white or light gray, and then go with your brightest silver, and even just if you want to just dry brush just the high points with the silver, and then begin laying in your blues. The shade washes, I would do more like a recessed shade. I really wouldn't push them too far down, but like just in the nooks of the carapace, things like that, and then give it an overall glazing of your brighter color. So if you were looking for, like a brighter blue or something along those lines, I think that would be really cool. Of course, that's all speculative, but I think I would go with white, then the silver, and then start laying the colors on top, just to get the allow that color to the metallic, the light bounce through the colors rather than having the metallic sitting on top of the colors. I think you might like the effect more that way. But you might want to look at Vallejo and other companies that produce fluorescent colors. I know Vallejo does. I'm at a loss who else produces fluorescent colors. I think MIG Ammo, they produce fluorescent colors. I think that's about it. But otherwise, yeah. So you might want to give that a try. And of course, you can always send me pictures. Of how it goes, because that sounds really interesting and I'd like to see how that goes. Next one is DeCrab. Kris, spelled my name wrong. Do you have a favorite color to work with and use it most, if not all of your models? I seem to use some form of red somewhere on everything I paint. Yeah, I have a favorite color. Jeez. It's a tough one. I seem to paint it on everything. William Kaw at Kris, the name butcher. Have you ever used a Q-tip to paint with? Not strictly to paint with, but I have used Q-tips to clear paint off a model and for various effects, usually, in oil washes or, shade wash, stuff like that, using a bit of rubbing alcohol and then pull the excess off and then, working with the color in that regards. But as far as like applying color, no. Mainly because Q-tips, even when I'm working with it using to pull off color, which is, a very light amount, usually it's alcohol, but I find even if you get caught on some angles, you leave a little bit of the fuzz behind, and I don't really like that. And so if you're working on your models and you're leaving little things of fuzz behind, I don't know you'll be excited about that. I don't think you'll be happy about it. I think you'll want to go home and rethink your life, kind of stuff, but yeah. But otherwise, no. To paint, no, I've not used the Q-tip to paint. Big Mikey, Kris, good time of day. I'm sure I've asked this before during Way of the Brush, but what are your thoughts on the new Eldar? Is there anything you are unhappy with or would like to see changed? Unhappy with? I don't like how all Eldar players basically are Altiok Eldar now. Just because of that rule, that craft world rule, that blanket -1 across the board for everything in the Eldar army, I don't think is right. I don't think it was intended, and until they FAQ that, I mean, why would anybody give up a big advantage like that? Especially to stress your opponents out, and so I think eventually if they do nerf that ability, it'll be just infantry, or it'll be infantry and bikers. But yeah, I mean that's the only thing. That's the only thing that kind of is upsetting to me is that, and like with the Samhan, like their reroll charges. Like, why would they make them close? Why would they make them close combat oriented? When they have, like, I mean, they only have, like, if you play Fluffy to Samhan, then they're all jet bikes, right? I mean, the Seer Council, maybe you want to throw that in more often than not. I mean, I found that they got to get really close anyway, because if you're going to use the Destructor ability, if you're using, a big Conclave, you got to get really close, because Destructor, they made that half the distance of normal Smite. Why, I don't know, but, that's what they wanted to do. And, so you got to get really close to use that anyway. And, so, I mean, if you're within 9 inches, I mean, you're within charge range anyway. And do you really need that reroll if you're Samhan? Possibly. Shining Spears. I don't actually have any Shining Spears, so I couldn't say. But I mean, I suppose that they would really benefit from it. But regular Guardian jet bikes, they don't have any close combat option. I mean, they really should, because, I mean, you have Guardian Defenders and you have Storm Guardians. So why wouldn't jet bikes have, basically, jet bike defenders and storm jet bikes, right? Why couldn't we have those? I mean, all it is a simple upgrade of, giving that Guardian a close combat weapon like Dark Eldar, right? They can fly by with a spear or, a flail or an axe or, something along those lines. Why couldn't regular Craftworld Eldar have that? Because especially if Samhan, they always describe them as, basically the whole Craftworld just rides around on their bikes, and they do everything from their bikes. And so why wouldn't they have close combat weapons for charging in against enemies, come in, blaze away with their guns, and then come by and finish off the little pieces that are left with their hand-to-hand weapons, right? So, yeah, I mean, I'm a Samhan player, as you might have guessed, and I was a little lackluster. I mean, it's pretty good, and I mean, the Relic of War for Samhan is really good. The Nova Lance, that's really good. The Warlord trait for them, where basically the character can, intervene in towards close to characters, is pretty cool too. And I mean, the overall Craftworld ability is pretty good. Reroll charges and ignore heavy weapon penalties for bikes. That's pretty darn good, because, it basically means that the bikes can use the scatter lasers again without any kind of negative penalties. And, I mean, that's a pretty good thing, I think. So, yeah. But I mean, otherwise, they need to nerf the Altiok ability. Otherwise, everybody's going to be using it. I mean, even if it was just infantry and bikes, I might still use it. It all depends on my army composition. If I was playing with my Conclave, I probably would if it still remained on the bikes. Just because, -1 for Altiok and then -1 for Conceal. -2 on, I mean, even Space Marines have a hard time hitting that stuff, right? So, yeah. But I mean, as far as the new Eldar, as far as units and stuff like that are concerned, no. I mean, I don't play with every unit in the Codex. I stick to a lot of the bikes, the vehicles, the Wraiths. I don't use a lot of the Aspect Warriors a lot of times. I have used Defenders and Storm Guardians before in the past, and I like the Avatar. The Avatar is very survivable. Oh, I played one tournament. Yeah, I brought Guardians and stuff. I brought Foot Heavy with the Avatar. And he kept them all there, despite everybody just getting mauled. But yeah, it worked out well. But yeah, so that's my only gripe, I think, with the Eldar Codex, is they got to change. They've got to correct Altiok, because I don't think it was an intention that every Eldar player is going to become Altiok just for that -1 hit. Because, I mean, it's pretty huge. I mean, Uthwi, it's a pretty good ability, right? 6, against wounds. That's pretty good. But I would take the -1 to hit. I would rather negate a wound before it occurs rather than after it occurs, right? So, yeah. Iyanden one is good. Keeping the rates a bracket above. That's pretty cool. I mean, who doesn't like that? Where are we in the comments? Nate, the big dog. Hi, Kris. What's the cheesiest Eldar list you've ever run? Did you feel bad after it? Does Steve cry? What is life? Do we even lift? Do you ever look at something and go, I can paint that so much better? In all seriousness, you are awesome, and I hope to meet you someday when I finally go up there and play a game with you. Well, awesome. I'm looking forward to it as well, Nate. The cheesiest Eldar list. Okay, here's a list I brought way back in the day. I think it was third edition. Third edition? Yeah, it was third edition. When Eldar Star Cannons had 3 shots. And I brought all jet bike and all Vipers. And basically, I brought the Samhan list, where basically they can take 1 HQ and like 6 fast. And so Vipers and jet bikes were fast at the time. And, you know, basically I took 3 jet bike units and 3 Viper units, because I had 9 at the time, all with star cannons. And of course, I was playing against somebody who was all on foot Marines. Basically, it was Khorans. It was Khoran Berserkers. It was a whole army of Khoran Berserkers. 1,500 points, all Khoran Berserkers versus all star cannons. And yeah, by the end of, I think it was by the end of, not even finished my second shooting phase, they were tabled. They were done. And did I feel bad? Sure, because it was my brother-in-law. But I mean, I picked on my brother-in-law all the time anyway. But yeah, it was kind of a tough go. It was a really kind of cheesy kind of list. And that was a long time ago. And, you know, I can still remember that. I don't feel good about it. It wasn't like it was, yeah, you know, I used superior tactics and I cunning and I outwitted and outsmarted my opponent. No, it was, I just brought a lot of guns. He brought the wrong list and he just got mowed down. And, you know, I mean, like it was, you know, it wasn't particularly exciting. And it was, you know, and of course, like I said, every Viper, I mean, like that's 3 times 3, you know, times 3. That's how many star cannon shots were coming his way. Did I feel bad about it? Yeah, a little bit after. Does Steve cry? Does Steve cry? Does he? I think if we start being like really gross and he's like about to yak, then yeah, he'll cry. What is life? Life is 42. Do I even lift? When I try, when I get the opportunity to. And do I ever look at something and go, I can paint that so much better? Yeah, I recently was walking past a building that was just completely decrepit and it had, you know, some sprayed letters on the side. And I said, you know what? I could paint that better. I was walking through the Louvre and I was walking through the Renaissance Gallery and I thought, I could paint that better. Where are we in the comments? I don't know. Captain Snickdaka. That's a fun one to say. Captain Snickdaka. Mr. Kris, other than painting, what other hobbies do you enjoy? Any video, board, or tabletop games you're currently playing? Any other hobbies I enjoy? Well, yeah, my hobby used to be painting, but now my job is painting miniatures. So now more of my hobbies fall in line with more of getting my actual artwork done, my canvases and stuff. I don't really consider it a hobby, but you know, more just personal expression and such. Really, a hobby would be, I guess, more like my photography, and that's about it, really. Just more artistic pursuits is really my hobbies. It's really just expression and examining forms of expression and things of that. I like to keep my pursuits quite artistic, and so, yeah, you know, not that I go really all highbrow about it or anything like that, but, you know, I try and keep it, you know, real. Any video, board game, or tabletop games I'm currently playing? Video games, I played the crap out of Battlefront 2. Of course, you know, Battlefield 1, and of course Call of Duty, the new Call of Duty World War II. I've been playing those. Xbox One. Of course, you know, I do play some StarCraft, classic StarCraft, and PUBG. Love me some PUBG, man. PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds. If you're not playing PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, you know, of course, well, Fortnite is also another version of it. It's kind of like the discount version of it. I mean, PUBG is great because it's got like a sense of realism to it. And it's, you know, it's like, ooh, scary, you know what I mean? But whereas Fortnite, it's kind of cartoony and everything. It's like, it's arcadey, and you know what I mean? Like, you don't get invested in it. Whereas PUBG, you're like, because everything's real. And was that bush moving? You know, who's over there? And, you know, like, yeah, it's the thing. Board game and tabletop games, 40K. I play a lot of 40K. Necromunda, I haven't played any Necromunda. I still have my, yeah, thanks, phone, for doing that to me while I'm doing live recording, or a recording. Yeah, so, haven't played it, because I still have my rat skins for Necromunda, And yeah, so haven't played any Necromunda. But as far as other tabletop games, no, haven't been playing anything. Just playing some 40K. Man, I haven't played War Machine in so long. Nobody around here plays it anymore. I don't know what happened to it. Is there still a community? Do people still play War Machine where you're at? Or is everybody back into 40K? Ever since 8th edition, everybody's been back into 40K. And so, I don't know. Is that really what everybody's doing? I have no idea. I'm not really with it. I used to be with it, but then they changed what it was. Holy man, what's with all these questions with the long walls of text? I mean, that's good. That means people are asking some very thoughtful type questions here. Michael Albright. Kris, I also have a painting question. I have started playing Warhammer 40K, and I'm starting a glorious Ultramarine army. The first models I chose to paint was a 10-man tactical squad, and for it being my first time, I found myself quite overwhelmed with the sheer amount of people I had to paint. I tried to paint them assembly line type way, where I put the base coat on all 10 of them, and then did the blue for their armor, etc., etc. Well, like I said, I found myself getting overwhelmed. Do you have any tips or tricks to perfecting assembly line way of painting? Or do you have to break them down into smaller groups and do them 3 at a time? What tricks do you have in painting a large amount of models in the shortest time possible without ruining their look? I love painting and I love the hobbies, but most people, I have a family and a job that gets in the way. Well, the family and job aren't getting in the way. You gotta deal with those first. But as far as, assembly line painting, I mean, man, anybody who's been taking my advice, for any number of years knows that I'm not, terribly excited about assembly line painting either. In fact, I'm terrible at it, really. I'll be honest, I'm terrible at it. I get bored. I get bored of it. When I tried, like I was recently, the last thing I was assembly line painting was my Seer Warlock Conclave, and man, that was hard. That took me, by the time I started getting around to painting them, even assembling them, I was, oh my God, I was doing them one at a time and then painting them. And then I used an airbrush for a good deal of it too, for all the bikes and stuff like that, and getting like most of the base colors down. Even still, I'm just, it's not terribly exciting. But then when I was nearing the end process and I was getting on to doing gemstones and stuff, and then I was like, oh, okay, I'm almost done. So yeah, it's an exercise in just getting through it. If you have, say, 10 Marines, break them down into 2 groups of 5, or break them down to 2s and 3s. Whatever chunks seem manageable, for whatever time you have. As long as you stay consistent with how you're painting your models, you'll get consistent results. Meaning, as long as you don't do any funny color mixtures, if you're using the paint straight out of the pot and you're using that color straight for across all 10 guys, you should end up, very similar. But otherwise, it's not a fun process. It's just kind of turning your brain off and just muscling through the whole thing. But once you get used to doing that kind of stuff, some people, and they're not used to it. And if you're painting to relax and it's your hobby, and you're dealing with life, you're dealing with work, and you're dealing with all these kind of things, and the hobby paint time is where you can zen out and collect yourself and recenter kind of thing. Just work on one model at a time. Don't be in a rush. Just get one model done at a time. There's no shame in that. If you want to play some games, well then you might want to speed up your process a little bit, but otherwise, no shame in it, man. No shame. But thank you for the question. What time are we at here? I think we're almost at the 30-minute mark here, and I'm just trying to see if I have... No, I've got one more question, so I think we will end it with this one question. And I think we're only going to have the one video, so there won't be a Vault 1 this series, because I'm on my last question here, and we've already got the 30 minutes going already. So this is from Bildrat. Kris, I just recently started painting 40K. I don't think I am doing too badly, but I can't help but wonder how some painters are able to get crazy levels of details on such tiny models. Even if I was able to improve my technique, I just don't think that I have the dexterity or the visual acuity to ever match their capabilities. Is this really something that I can improve with practice? Thanks for your advice. Yes, it is something you can improve with practice. It takes time and practice. I mean, I didn't just, jump into this hobby and just start painting, really beautiful pieces. I had to work on it, and I still work on it. I still examine color and how I can make color schemes and what colors play well with each other. I still agonize over those things, So, you just gotta keep staying with it and keep practicing. It's in part muscle memory, but it's also, just sticking to it and experience and learning and, really kind of enjoying it. If you're not having fun with it, and you're not having fun with how the colors play and, your blends and, how the colors lay on top and all these things, if that's not exciting to you and it's not, it's not enjoyable in any fashion, then, your painting probably is going to be more utility and just kind of getting the painting done rather than really exploring the artistic side of things and really kind of getting invested, mentally and emotionally and, and really getting into the spirit of the models and such, right? So, but again, yes, it is practice. You can practice the heck out of it and get better and better and better and better and better and better. And so you see some of those pieces where the people do some wonderful freehanding. It almost looks like a painting on like a shoulder pad. And you're like, wow, can I do that? Yes, you can. With practice, you can. You can with practice. Now, the people who can do that kind of stuff right now, they're oftentimes really good at drawing. So if you're not really good at drawing, maybe you may want to start taking up drawing and pick up some books on drawing and how to draw and because that skill does translate into our painting. All these skills do translate in some fashion or other into other things, painting and drawing and photography and all these things, all this knowledge that we accumulate from all these artistic endeavors do compile into one way in which we can view the world and how we solve little problems on, how we want something to look, what kind of particular feeling we want to go for, what have you. And they all play a big part in our roles. And so, don't be afraid to keep practicing. You're not going to be good at it. I can guarantee you're not going to be good at it the first time, but keep practicing, keep practicing. I wasn't good. Man, I've told people this 100 times. I wish I still had my first models. I wish I still had my first models so that I could show people that what kind of crap I was painting early on in my painting career, my miniature painting career, so that people could say, well, geez, yeah, Kris is painting like this now, but look at what he used to paint like, man. That was garbage. And so, there is, hope for everybody out there that, yes, you could get better. Everybody, as long as you stick to it and as long as you're willing to learn new things and try new things and experiment and play, as long as you're willing to do those things, you will get better. And this goes for everybody out there. You will get better if you're willing to try and experiment and play. As long as you're willing to do those, you will get better at this. I promise you. It won't be tomorrow. It won't be next month. It won't be next year. Well, probably about next year. If you kept at it pretty good. If you were at like every weekend, you got to some painting. Every weekend, yeah. I would say next year you would be a very noticeable difference between what you're painting like today and what you're painting like from a year from now. 2 years, 10 years. You know what I mean? It's all time and practice. And this is a hobby for a lot of you guys, for a majority of you out there. And that's really what it is. It's time, to disconnect from the real world, concentrate on something that makes you happy, makes you feel good, makes you feel nostalgic, makes you feel like a kid again, and revitalizes your spirit and makes you happy and keeps you from being a jerk, and it's important that you get that time. Not saying all the time, but at least some of the times. You're allowed some of the times. But anyway, so thank you for the questions. There won't be a vault portion to this because there wasn't that many questions, but I think, I think you guys get the gist of it. And so I want to thank everybody for writing questions. Again, next week will be Steve, I'm pretty sure. I don't know. But anyway, so yeah, leave your question for Steve. And of course, if it's in response to anything I said today, just leave it at Kris. And of course, happy wargaming, and I'll see you guys later. Yeah, I think we learned something here.